All right, hi, my name is Clarma, and I am currently a product manager at Meta Reality Labs. I have been at Meta for 3.5 years now, formerly known as Facebook, and I joined the company by way of the Rotating Product Manager Program, also known as RPM. And around this time of year me and my other RPM alumni or other RPM colleagues will get direct messages on LinkedIn and emails and social media from a lot of people who are really interested in joining this program. It is a very prestigious program in the sense, I wouldn't say prestigious as much as I would say it's very competitive. And so it's not uncommon to, get requests, numerous amount of requests for people wanting to ask you questions, spend some time to get to understand our individual experiences in the program, and to get more clarity around what they can expect around the role, and especially as they are ramping up in terms of how they can best practice for it and basically set themselves up for success in the interview process. With that said, because we do workloads can still be very tough, so between that and the hundreds of requests it seems like at times, it can get really hard to have those coffee chats with everyone. Obviously, I'd love to have coffee chats and share a lot about the processes with everyone that reaches out to me. It's something that I was very much benefited from before I joined. And so, but it is getting harder and harder to do. So with that said, I'm going to be putting together a video and answering all the questions that I've gotten so far. And also too, we'll share a little bit about things that I wish I'd known before I got into the program, things I think that I did to set myself apart, hopefully give some tips and I want to say tricks because there's no tricks. This is it does demand your 100%. And so, but I'll just share with you a little bit about my learning process and how I was able to land an offer for the program despite not really having a traditional background that would typically get into this role. So anyways, I'm happy to share about that. I'm also going to share a little bit about my experiences. And yeah, but like I said, this whole video is going to be a frequently asked questions type of videos topic, so hopefully I hit them all. But if you have more questions, I'm happy to answer below in the comment section. I hope this could give you clarity and either excitement or a clear understanding of how to allocate or invest, how much to invest in your process for interviewing for the RPM program. For those of you who don't know what the RPM program is, this is something that I wish I knew a lot earlier. I happened to come across it by happenstance. RPM stands for Rotational Product Management. A lot of different companies have a program like this where they basically hire what I'll say is entry level product managers. They wrap you around with mentorship, and you'll do short stints on different teams where you can deliver some sort of impact depending on what the options are available, and you learn on the job to get up to speed on how to be a successful, they set you up for success to be a product manager in the company in general. Now, typically, if you know anything about product management, it's a really vague role. It's a really vague concept. Like, there is no college or degrees that you get to do product management. It's because it's the nature of that role is very entrepreneurial. There's not much institutional education that you can get to really build your skills up for this. It's one of those things that you either have that instinct for as like an entrepreneur, or you are able to practice and put in the time to learn over time through experience how to think and operate and be a PM in general. So it's not something that nobody can do, but whether you enjoy it or not is going to be the question. So you could see, like, for example, if you like being an entrepreneur, if you have a penchant for coming up with new ideas, if you enjoy sharing strategies, if you enjoy aligning different diverse stakeholders, if you enjoy helping solve for problems and thinking for users at the intersection of a company mission, as well as the team that health. If those are things that you like to do, and to come up with ideas and generate them, or build a product from zero to one and launch it, or grow a product that's already successful, but figure out new ways that it could be more impactful and add more value to anyone's experience or user's experience particularly, then that's basically the bulk of what being a product manager is. The day-to-day is, I'll explain the day-to-day in a little bit, but it's basically what it is at a high level. So if that sounds appealing to you, then you might want to consider checking out these programs, especially if maybe, I know a lot of times people won't know what it is until they join a company. So they might join it as an engineer or a designer or a data scientist and all of that, and you come in with a specific skill set that you got from from an institutional school. For example, engineering, there's computer science degrees. For design, you can go to design school and get those design degrees. Data science, the same thing. There are actual classes for it, but for product management, there isn't. So it's not uncommon for people to join a tech company, see what that is, and all of a sudden be like, wow, that's something I think I'd like to do. Now, what you'll find is that people who do these jobs and are interested in product management, it's because it tends to be more often than not that they want to be able to be very deeply engaged with the strategy and the vision for thinking long term for what products you build for a company. And so what I'll say to that is not to say that they are not involved already. They typically are, but sometimes they don't have the transparency, because as a product manager, you sit at the center of everyone involved with the product. When you think about all these different features, there are whole teams that are usually behind each of these features. And so as a product manager, you own one of those features, and you and your team, which is made up of diverse stakeholders, engineers, data scientists, designers, UX researchers, marketing folks. You might partner with them. We call them XFN, to be short, like cross-functional members. People, communications, legal, lawyers. They all might be dedicated to your product, and that's not even. There's definitely a lot more to that, QA, all of that. And so you are the center of all of those people when it comes to your product, and you are collaborating with all of them to, one, come up with a strategy, come with a vision, help prioritize. That's really probably the key thing about a product manager. You help set the priorities, what the team is going to work on, what goals that we should try to hit, what success for this product looks like, and how we can make sure that success ladders up to the company mission. Okay, so here's some typical questions, or most common popular questions that I usually get for people who are interested in joining the RPM program. The first one I'll get is people are really interested in my background and how I joined RPM. And what I'll say is, I think when people are asking this question, they're trying to pattern match how their experience might lend them higher chances or lower chances to getting into the program. With that said, I want to hopefully be a source of inspiration that no matter what your background is, if you get that call back and you have the chance to interview, how well you practice for those interviews, and how much time you spend practicing how to answer these interview questions and all of that, that's going to be the determining factor. And the reason why I can say that is because I definitely do not have a typical background at all for being someone who has joined the program. From my personal observation, I can't say details. I don't know the exact facts. This is my personal observation, and so this could be wrong. This could be off base in general. I typically see most of the people I've seen in the program who do get into RPM seem to come from specific schools, whether it's not common for, I think, people who come in from RPM to come in from an Ivy League background or or consulting background, and I think between those two it seems to be like a pretty majority of that, and typically in the 20s, that kind of a thing. If I had known that, if I had even known the ratio of coupled between that and the number of people who actually get the job offer and how many people actually apply. If I had known any of those facts, I probably would not have applied, because I would have thought I'm clearly not it. Especially as a Black woman too, I did not see much examples for that. I will probably say there wasn't many of us. I don't want to give exact numbers because I don't think I should, but let's just say that there was very little, very, very, very little. I think I saw, actually I'll just say I saw one that was like years before that had made it in. So ultimately, based on that alone, I knew this was going to be a long shot. But when I read about the program, when I learned about what it is, and knowing my own passions for new technology and virtual reality and all of that, and being an entrepreneur myself, I knew that I had to try. And I think that was enough. I felt very aligned with the company mission at this point. I had been working on a lot of company products. Like I said, I've been working in VR since 2015, specifically with Oculus devices most of the time. And obviously I was an avid Facebook user, an avid Instagram user. It had done so much for my own economic development. If that makes sense. Like I used to do a lot of backpacking, and I was a freelancer and self-employed. So those platforms really helped me attract audiences or leads or markets that enabled me to have freelance career that probably wouldn't have been attainable for me outside of those free platforms to do so. So I personally was very passionate about the products, the Facebook products in and of itself. So I think that was enough for me to feel motivated to at least try as hard as I can. And like I said, I didn't know how rare it was to get this role. I did not know all of that stuff. So that ignorance actually kept me motivated, because I'm pretty sure it would have killed my motivation real quick if I knew the facts. So I would just say, don't worry. If I could give any advice, do not worry about your competition. Do not worry. I do interviews now for RPM right now. When I tell you, you don't worry about the numbers and the statistics. Just worry about really bringing your A game. Like, bring your A game, because that alone is going to separate you from any of the other interviewers. That's all I can say. Okay, so question: how did I prepare for the RPM interview? So I Googled everything Facebook RPM at that time that I could find on YouTube and Google and Glassdoor and all of that. I talked to a couple people who applied to Facebook. One of them got a job offer as a PM. The other one, I found out through her that someone else, because I was part of Oculus Launchpad that year. In 2017, Oculus Launchpad was a program for VR developers where you can submit an app and you can potentially win funding. So I knew someone who had went through the program a year before. Apparently she had interviewed for RPM and had gotten the offer that same year that I had just heard about it. I asked her if she'd be willing to chat with me about it, and she's like, yeah. So she walked me through, she showed me first, what does interviewing for this interview look like? And that in of itself was a culture shock. So I would say the first thing that you would do, I would recommend, and what was helpful for me, was one, having someone who did the interview show you how to answer some of these questions, because it is unlike anything else, especially if you've never worked in tech like I did. I think it might be natural for someone who has a consulting background or or just coming out of Ivy League and doing these, but I had never experienced that before. So it was definitely watching it even once, seeing that modeled for me was enough for me to get in a sense of, okay, this is where I need to be. And in order to do that well, while in concept, I can understand exactly what happened there. I knew that it was not in my muscle memory to be able to show my whole product thinking process from 0 to 1 in 30 minutes. And be able to communicate well and succinctly in that 30 minutes. So with that said, like, what wasn't available to me then is now available for anyone. If you go on YouTube and Google mock interviews for Facebook RPM program, or interviewing at Facebook or Google or whatever, like, there are videos now that are publicly available online where you can see people do the interview process that are current Facebook employees and all that, or Meta employees now. So you no longer need to know someone on the inside to show it and model to you. I was very fortunate by way of that Oculus Launchpad program to have the access to connections of people who've successfully got in or worked at the company and have successfully interviewed to show me and model it, and I just needed it modeled once, and I was able to, it clicked. And then from there, I knew that there was going to be a lot of contextual understanding that I needed to have in order to be able to execute on that well on my own. And so it was recommended, I think from some of the articles, there was a guy named Lewis Lynn who I think made a whole job or a career out of literally helping people on how to pass these interviews. The 2 books that I highly recommend reading, I bought them on Kindle, but Cracking the PM Interview, Decode and Conquer, let me actually get the name for it. Okay, yeah. One of them was Decode and Conquer by Lewis C. Lynn. It's a must read if you've never done interviews like this before. And then there's Cracking the PM Interview, and that is by Gail Lackman McDowell and Jackie Bavaro. Cracking the PM Interview. You need those 2 books, and Decode and Conquer. I don't think there's any new books that have come since then, but those 2 still stand today. They give you the basic understanding, fundamental understanding. Investing in those 2 books will not hurt you at all. Number 3, I would say another thing that really helped me and what my journey looked like. So I read those 2 books, and then I went on Glassdoor, and I looked up every single question that people said that were asked of them. Glassdoor blessed those people, because those are really vital. These are questions that, yes, you might get asked, and even if it's not the exact same question, it will have the same structure, and it might just be a different product. So I literally noted down, I documented every single question that I saw that was available on on Glassdoor, and I would start practicing against that. So Glassdoor, YouTube, I would watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos. Like I said, I Googled everything RPM, Facebook RPM, and then product management, and any blogs and all that would come up, that was my material to give me clarity and understanding about how to do this well. Number 4, practice. I can't say this enough. And not just practice like practice on your own. I mean quality practice. Practice. Then get mock interviewed by friends, family, other PM people, all that. And then also don't be afraid to whiteboard and take note. Just document your learning process as you're going through it. So that was another thing that I did after I read those books, and I generated that list that I was able to scrape offline and all the types of questions that they'll ask. I then, number 5, set time to practice interviewing every single day. So I think I had like a couple months before my first interview, or a month or so. I was really early in applying, and so I worked in a basement of my job. After my job was over, I took one of the offices, and it was filled with whiteboards, and I would just spend the next hour, 2 hours practicing 1 product sense, 1 execution, and I would just do that every single day. So for 2 hours every single day, and then on weekends I try to put in a few hours in as well, and I just did that consistently because I saw it modeled and I know what good looked like. When I was practicing, I knew how far it was off from that, and so that to me told me I need to practice more, I need to dedicate more time to this, so that way I can walk through 30 minutes and feel as confident as my friend showed me the whole way, not even budging to stop, not thinking things through. Because the first time I started practicing, I would always get stuck. I'd be like, I would start here, and I'm like, oh shit, I don't know how to get past here. I don't know what to do next. And that was me for probably the first month and a half or 2 months of doing this on a regular basis. There was always some part of the flow that I get stuck in, and I didn't know how to get out of it. And you can imagine that when you're actually interviewing, you're already under a huge stress in and of itself. Like the interview in itself this is it. Like it's the final game. Like you have to, it's all or nothing at this point. And when you're in the all or nothing state, when you get stuck, that's it. And I was trying to prevent those. And what I will say is that when you get this is going to separate you from the pack. If you're worried, if you did the mistake of looking past the hood and see how many people get in or not, what the actual ratio is. I'm not even going to say it on this video because I don't want to discourage people. If I had known the success rate for interviewing, I would never have applied. That would have been a mistake. So sometimes just you got to trust yourself, you got to believe in yourself, and you got to put in the work. And that alone, putting in the work of practicing and getting to a spot where you feel very good about what you did, is how do I say it, is what's going to separate you from the pack.